In this guide, we're going to be looking at all the different enemy types and bosses in the horror adventure game Reanimal. So the Tarsier devs have decided to ramp things up a few notches, as we're going from little nightmares to some really bloody big nightmares. Reanimal is a very twisted and somewhat mysterious tale about a brother and sister who found themselves trapped in a godforsaken island. They're both on the lookout for a way out of this hellscape, along with random crap in the environment they can plop on their heads, though the main thing they're trying to find is their missing friends, who've all been split up and lost in this savage world. The journey isn't going to be quite so simple though, as the island's also plagued with monstrous freaks and reanimated abominations, all of which intend to hunt them down and do some very nasty things to them. So the island might seem like a pretty miserable place from the get-go, sort of resembling a typical January afternoon in the north of England, and it doesn't take very long until some of its grimmest discoveries literally start to unravel themselves. As you make your way through the opening areas of the game, you'll notice that someone's been dumping a load of hollowed out skin suits everywhere. They're hung up on pipes, squished into lockers, they're even clogging up the bloody toilet. Like I said, these things are absolutely everywhere. Having a bunch of naked Mr. Burns lookalikes hanging around is definitely a strange way to decorate the place, but they certainly seem normal in this neck of the woods, with hundreds of these lifeless flesh flannels being hung up in the area, or flapping about in the breeze like soggy onesies. But of course, this is an enemy guide after all, and these morbid looking things are a lot more dangerous than they first might seem, with some of these skins choosing to reanimate and slither around the place like wrinkly worms. Not entirely sure what organ they're using to propel themselves along the floor, not too sure if I really want to know that either, but it's a pretty cool party trick nevertheless. And just as you might expect from a human flesh bag with snake-like characteristics, these skins are going to persistently chase you down and devour you if you let them get too close, obviously giving you a good enough reason to try and keep your distance. The game's main focus might be on its creepy reanimated animal monsters, hence why it's called Reanimal, but our first major bad guy is actually something a bit different. The Sniffer sorta looks like a creature that's cosplaying as a human. He's a very warped and disturbing guy with twisted limbs, a floppy body, and a face that looks like it's been hit by a Land Rover, possibly using this familiar yet distorted humanoid form to try and hide the real monstrosity lurking underneath. Whatever the hell the Sniffer is, he's definitely a bit of a shady character, spending a lot of his time dragging bodies around and ironing out his collection of human skins, which kinda solves the mystery of why these things are just casually lying around everywhere. And this might be thematically tied to the cruel nature of people in the real world, killing and skinning animals for their own personal gain, obviously with the roles being reversed here. So yeah, this guy literally makes your skin crawl, and it's probably no surprise that he's going to be extremely hostile. He actually moves pretty fast for a crooked bastard, and he's even known to twist his limbs around and scurry about on the floor like a demented crab. Though if you think that's wild, wait till he starts diving into the random dead bodies dotted around the place and using them as meat portals. God only knows how he's able to do that, but it's definitely a trick that's sure to keep you on edge, as he's able to pop out unexpectedly and move between places without any need for transportation. If he can do that, then why the hell does he drive around in a bloody ice cream van then? I guess this could be part of his disguise to try and seem like a normal human with an innocent way of life. But we know that's not the case, of course, and the only way you're going to escape from this guy is by stealing his van and driving it away as far as possible, something the Sniffer's not going to let you do without a bit of resistance first. Gotta stop him from climbing into the van by smacking his hands and forcing him back out the window, while he's clinging on for dear life, which will eventually cause him to slip off the side of the van, thus allowing you to make a hasty retreat. Large portions of the island have been completely flooded and submerged underwater, forcing us to use our little boat and push on through certain areas of the game. This seems to have caused a lot of the locals to drown, who are now left behind as bloated, waterlogged corpses, making the place look even eerier than it would have been otherwise. They might seem dead on the face of it, just bobbing around in the water, but just like those hollowed out skin suits, some of these guys are capable of reanimating, coming back to life with an unrelenting urge to gorge themselves on masses of food, because why the hell not? These guys aren't just here to binge eat leftover cans of beans though, as they're also out to cause you some nasty problems too. Being called boomers, expect them to blow up like mines if you let them get too close. Kinda makes you wonder how they drowned in the first place if they can swim like friggin' Olympians, though they'll become a lot easier to deal with after you find a big pile of harpoons to skewer them with. Thankfully, there's an unlimited supply of these just rolling around in the bottom of your boat, so don't be afraid to use them whenever you need to. If you've ever been to the seaside with a bag of chips, then you'll probably know that seagulls can be absolute dicks. They're stupidly boisterous, chaotic birds known for shitting on people's heads and making children cry. And the ones over here in Reanimal aren't exactly going to give you a very pleasant time either. They're a lot bigger than normal, and they can also be very aggressive. Not to mention the fact that they look like scruffy zombified variants with no eyeballs, once again implying that these creatures might have been subjected to some sort of reanimation process. Most of the lone seagulls are just going to fly off without giving you any issues, but when they've got all their mates hanging around, then they're prone to being a lot ballsier, attacking in large groups in an effort to try and overwhelm you with their numbers. But at the end of the day, you're the one holding the crowbar, and they'll probably regret trying to take you on the moment they get slapped in the face by it. I guess the first big animal monster we'll have the joy to run into comes in the form of a giant demented pelican, which sweeps on by to kidnap one of your buddies, only to whisk him off to an anonymous lighthouse on the top of a faraway cliff. Better get those climbing boots on, cause you're in for one hell of a trek. After battering your way through an army of seagulls, and making 10,000 steps look like a piece of piss, you'll eventually reach the pelican's lair, and find your little friend chilling out in a birdcage at the back of the room. Not too sure how the pelican actually managed to put him in that cage, but considering there's a guy that can teleport through dead people, I'll let this one slide. It doesn't take too long until the rescue mission suddenly turns into a survival mission, as the sneaky pelican reveals itself and frantically chases you back down the stairs of the lighthouse. Not very happy that you've just gone and robbed his newly acquired pet human. You're left dashing away for your life while trying to avoid getting snapped up by that crazy bird face, though it's kinda hard to take this thing seriously when it's got a beak pouch swinging around like a big dangly nutsack. And the fact that it also happens to be one of the clumsiest monsters to ever exist in a video game just makes this thing all the more hilarious to run away from. Basically like being chased off by a pissed off pelican version of Mr. Bean. Well, practically every seagull on the island decides to show up to help the big bird out, all sacrificing themselves to kamikaze you from the air, forcing you to seek out shelter in the nearby barns and structures. The three kids get chased into a farmhouse full of pigs, but of course, Mr. Scrotum Face is going to come bursting through that ceiling to try and ruin everyone's day. But simply running out the other door and trapping the pelican inside the flaming barn should be enough to stop it from harassing you for the rest of your journey. Upon arriving at the seemingly abandoned orphanage, one of the first things you'll notice is a bunch of childlike statues all frozen in place, looking a bit suspicious. Obviously there was always going to be something amiss about this place, and you'll soon discover that these statues were actually alive before the sunlight turned them into stone. These are the Spider Kids, faceless dust children trapped in the orphanage, which seem to have formed their own small society here. Though just like practically everything else on this horrible island, they're not going to be very nice, instantly rushing over for a bit of a brawl whenever they spot you intruding in their home. Because there's quite a lot of Spider Kids in the building, you'll need to have that crowbar at the ready for most of your time in there. Though despite being found in an orphanage, these kids aren't actually orphans at all. Not in a literal sense anyway, as the reason why they're called Spider Kids is because they're actually the offspring of a ginormous 8-legged freak known as the Mother. Enter our next big animal monster of the game, which lurks beneath the orphanage in the dark ruins of an underground city. The Mother's a bit of a secretive creature to begin with, mainly just waiting around in a dark pit for her children to lower down sacrificial offerings, which we could probably assume that she's gonna have for a dinner. Problem is, your bucket-headed buddy is also going to be presented as a gift too, and once again, the rescue mission goes a bit tits up, with the Spider Kids doing a bit of a sneaky on you, and donating you to the big beastie waiting down below. The Mother is definitely one of the strangest creatures in the game, basically a giant blob of fur with a bunch of arachnid-styled limbs, and it gives birth to its children by vomiting them out through a large gaping hole in its furry face. You'll escape from your bindings and be chased around by the monster, which spews out masses of Spider Kids to come charging after you too. Basically just gotta keep moving around the building without getting snatched up by the Mother, or without getting assaulted by her legions of dusty little minions, with them all being on high alert, actively wandering around the orphanage to try and hunt you down. The Spider Kids can't go into the sunlight, so it makes sense to try and move around from outside the building, using the ledges and balconies. With that said, the Mother's not really bothered about getting a bit of fresh air, and so it's gonna come scuttering out to chase you along the narrow ledges and walkways, eventually forcing you back inside and trapping you both into a dormitory, puking out a large gang of dust minions to go and back her up, and kicking off a bit of a boss fight. Although the Mother could probably just flatten you both in less than a second, she decides to keep retreating from the battle and letting her kids take over, who like to throw their insta-kill spears at you, which can be picked up and used against the kids or the big hairy spider. This is the only way you're going to win against this thing, and lobbing enough spears at the Mother will whittle down its energy and eventually cause it to retreat from the fight, where she'll scurry off down a dark corridor. It's looking a bit worse for wear after being turned into a fluffy pincushion, though we're just going to casually wander into its mouth to try and find that kid with the bucket on his head, because that's certainly going to cheer it up. A little bit earlier on in the game, before you climb up to the lighthouse to take on the nasty Pelican, you'll wind up in the middle of a huge lake area with a massive artillery cannon plopped in the middle. You could venture up the cliffside to the lighthouse, like you probably should at this point of the game, or you could investigate the creepy looking chasm on the other side, where a gigantic skeletal beast called the Brook Horse likes to mope around guarding the entrance. If you sail over to it, the monster's going to submerge under the murky water and disappear down said creepy chasm. So of course, let's go and follow the bloody thing in our tiny arse boat, because that seems like a very sensible thing to do, doesn't it? Probably no surprise what will happen next, as the Brook Horse is going to come swimming over to crush us into paste with its human-like hands. Guess we're not going to be going back down there in a hurry. This thing's just not going to let us pass, so we're going to have to convince it to let us pass by blowing the bugger up with that big arse cannon, as we'll later be able to call a care package in containing some ammunition, which should be more than enough firepower to send this thing packing. Now we get to find out what's on the other side of that creepy chasm. Well, a huge abandoned naval ship that's run aground, which is inconveniently blocking the path forwards, forcing us to go inside of it to do a bit of snooping. Well, what do you know, there's a big whale in here that seems to be missing an eye, and that also seems to be blocking the path ahead too. Bloody marvellous. Guess we'll have to slip into those nearby diving suits and plunge into the abyss to see if we can try and solve our problems down there somehow. After using the diving cage to reach the seabed, we'll find some kind of eerie sunken village, and we'll also find the Brook Horse here too. He seems to have drifted downstream and got stuck under a big pile of rubble, and there's nothing else down here for us to salvage, so let's just pop his eye out and take that, because why not? But this is a horror game after all, and so the absolute worst thing that could happen in this situation does happen. Of course, he's going to come back from the dead to chase us through the dark structures of the underwater abyss. It's a less than ideal situation to be in, especially with you both being bogged down by those heavy diving suits, and if the monster catches up to you, well, it's going to get a bit of sweet revenge. Mines dotted around the tunnel's exit will cause the surrounding structures to collapse, trapping the Brook Horse behind a wall of debris. Back in the cage we go to return to the surface once again, but not without another quick jolt of anxiety first. The horse is really pissed off that you shot it with an artillery shell and robbed his eye, but thankfully you'll be able to escape the beast unscathed, unless you wait around in the caves like I did just for shits and giggles. Let's pay our whale friend a visit to give him the eyeball as a present, which will persuade him to shift out of the way and let us go forward to the next messed up place on this island. One of the main underlying messages of Reanimal is the subject of war, the horrors it creates, the monsters it creates, and the innocent lives it either snuffs out or changes for the worst. After venturing across the island, we'll wind up in the middle of an actual battleground. There's a network of muddy trenches, the sky lit up by bombs detonating all around us, and basically we've ended up in some sort of strange reimagining of World War I. So you can expect there to be soldiers around here too, but just like everything else in this game, there's something a little bit off with them. They're probably the most humanoid looking things we've seen in the game so far, though they're still not entirely human, having disfigured melting faces, displaying a lack of identity, while having a general confusion about who they should actually be fighting. This could all probably be a bit of a play on how the enemy in conflict is often dehumanized and perceived as monsters by their opposition, something that happened a lot with World War I propaganda posters. But because the soldiers in Reanimal are like mindless killing machines, you can expect them to paint you as a target too. Some of the wounded are capable of reanimating and crawling after you with their grenades ready to pop off, forcing you to run for the hills to avoid being blown to pieces. The ones still capable of using firearms are going to use those firearms, forcing you to watch out for riflemen and troops stationed at machine gun turrets, all of which are out to riddle you with bullet holes and make a bit of a mess of the place. You'll encounter a trigger-happy sniper perched off in a clock tower in the distance who basically just wants to gun down anything that moves, whether that be yourself or the other soldiers in the vicinity. So a lot of your time here will be spent avoiding sightlines, ducking and weaving between cover pieces, trying your best not to get your head shot off, until you eventually find a rocket launcher to blow the bugger up. You've even got to go up against a bloody tank, which wants to blow the living crap out of everything. So navigating through this battlefield definitely isn't going to be a walk in the park. Let's just say, nobody here seems to be on your side. So we're on to the final monster of the game, which is arguably the most menacing one of the lot. The actual origin of this thing is really weird and sort of involves a mysterious cult-like ritual, with the monster itself seeming to be some kind of demonic entity born into this world to cause pain and suffering. The sister's prone to having dark visions of a dead lamb at the bottom of a well, with the lamb growing, twisting and reanimating more and more with each new vision, to the point where it's able to try and climb its way back out of the well using the newly formed legs that have sprouted out from its body. These visions make the sister feel very sick, eventually leading to her puking out an entire friggin' lamb, which might seem like an impossible thing to do, but may or may not actually have some sort of religious connotations. In the Bible, the Virgin Mary gave birth to Jesus Christ, aka the Lamb of God. This creature in the game is quite literally a lamb, also born in an inexplainable supernatural way, and so it might actually symbolize some kind of Antichrist, here to bring about the apocalypse in a very unholy manner. So basically the opposite to Jesus. Whatever the bloody hell this thing is, it's out to cause some absolute chaos and gobble you all up with its giant sheep face, being an extremely dangerous monster that you'll have a few run-ins with after it's been unleashed to create havoc on the island. The longer it's wandering around feasting on the dead, the bigger and stronger it becomes. It's going to pick all your buddies off one by one until it's just you and the sister left to escape by yourselves. Remember that tank we had to avoid getting blasted by earlier? Well, we'll manage to gain control of it and use the tank to try and fend the sheep beast off, in a very epic chase sequence towards the final parts of the game. It's pretty fast and can very quickly catch up to us if we're not careful, but firing tank shells into its head should at least slow the monster down a bit. 15 tank shells to the face aren't going to be quite enough though, and you're going to fall victim to the monster's wrath with it cracking the tank open like a tin can, only for it to fall down into a ditch after being shot in the face one more time. Is the thing dead yet? Of course it's not, and it's actually going to pop out from the rubble to gobble you up too. With the sister being the sole survivor, she's left to try and escape the sheep beast while it violently mutates into a massive woolly abomination, tearing its way through the remnants of the city, practically destroying everything in its wake. But in the end, there's only one place she can go, and that's down the monster's gullet too, revealing the game's twisted, yet still pretty mysterious backstory about how the kid sacrificed the sister in a spooky ritual, with the island possibly being some sort of hellish purgatory, where they're all trapped in an endless looping cycle. There's a lot of unanswered questions here, with the actual story being left open to interpretation and speculation. But the bottom line is, it's the humans that are the real monsters in this world, not necessarily the animals. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, then you might want to check out my guide for all the enemies in Little Nightmares. Though if you want to check out my entire collection of horror game monsters, then that playlist should be up on the screen right now too. Special thanks to my channel members for all the support, and a big thanks for watching this guide till the very end.